When people ask what psychedelics are, one can say that psychedelics are tools. They are tools that, it's true, they come in chemical format, but ultimately they are tools for transformation, which can be quite a deep transformation, be it on a psychological level, emotional, sometimes even spiritual level. They're not tools that offer an instant fix, however. They are tools that offer more of an access kind of, they offer more access to different parts of ourselves, parts that at times have been hidden, perhaps, that we're not so much in touch with, parts that we try to avoid as well, and sometimes also being in touch with something that is broader than ourselves.
There are many different types of psychedelics, and each of them, they have their own kind of personality, so to speak. You may have heard of LSD, psilocybin from magic mushrooms or truffles, DMT, which is found in substances like ayahuasca, or mescaline, which comes from cacti like huachuma, San Pedro, or peyote, which are the more traditional plant medicine types. No? There are also other substances that aren't classical psychedelics but have a powerful psychological effect, such as MDMA, which is often used in therapeutic contexts to access emotion, to access past memories, and increase trust. Each of these substances work differently, but they can help us see and feel in a different way.
It is true that psychedelics are used in recreational settings as well, but psychedelics don't only produce visuals or strange thoughts. They impact our perception, our emotions, our memory, and sometimes also the spiritual side. On a neurological level, they reduce activity of some parts of the brain. For example, the default mode network, which are different parts of the central part of our brain. And these parts of the brain are responsible for making sense of the self. In a way, they filter the experience that what we receive from the outside world and how we think about life to make it a bit easier for us to live life. At the same time, they also increase brain connectivity. So different parts of the brain that don't usually communicate, during a psychedelic experience, they have the chance to communicate with each other. And this leads to the possibility of the brain to change the way it usually thinks about things, the way it usually processes things. So what psychedelics do ultimately is they create this window of what we call neuroplasticity, which is when the brain creates new connections physically between different parts of itself, allowing for us to change the way then we see ourselves and the world around us on a more permanent basis. So in simple terms, one can say that psychedelics help us see differently and therefore start learning to be different people as well.
Psychedelics aren't magical cures, but they are amplifiers. They rarely give us what we expect, but often show us what we need, whether that's clarity, processing grief, joy, or letting go. So, following this idea, they can bring unconscious material to the surface. They can help us break out from rigid mental patterns such as depression or even addiction and help us get into an emotional deep release. They let us see behaviors, patterns, wounds, defenses from a new angle. And many times they help us reconnect either to ourselves, to others, to the world around us. So it's not that psychedelics do the healing, it's that they create the conditions where healing becomes possible. You are the one who has to do the work.
The use of psychedelics goes back thousands of years, ultimately, because indigenous peoples have worked with plant medicines in sacred and ceremonial settings for healing, for guidance, for connection as well. But in the 1960s, Euro-American science began exploring these substances, and that momentum, however, was abruptly shut down by the war on drugs and the criminalization process that happened after that. Now, however, we are in a bit of a new renaissance, and research into psychedelics and mental health is growing rapidly. For example, some forms of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy are becoming legal in some countries, and the focus here is more on deep inner directed experiences. But these experiences are supported by trained professionals.
Psychedelics are not the answer to everything, and they might not be the right tools for everyone. One needs to be in the right mental and physical state to go through them. No? But in the right setting, with the right preparation, with care and support, they can be really meaningful tools, and they can be very relevant tools of growth.